Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Baby Lock. Their Victory and Celebrate sergers include the features you've come to expect from Baby Lock at attractive price points. Both sergers come complete with jet air threading, which threads the lower loopers with the touch of a lever, and a presser foot with a 6mm height, which makes serging on thicker fabrics a breeze. Right now, you can get a Victory for $1,499 and a Celebrate for $999. Best of all, each machine comes with a 60-day trial of online sewing classes. To learn more and find a retailer, visit babylock.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Original Sewing and Quilt Expo. Hey there! We'd like to introduce you to Original Sewing and Quilt Expo. There's shopping, runway fashion shows, free demos, and plenty of hands-on classes taught by experts who can help bring your sewing up a notch. Right now, you can visit sewingexpo.com to see this year's calendar. Plus, you can sign up for their March expos in Atlanta, Georgia and Lakeland, Florida. And exclusively for Threads listeners, enter the promo code THREADS in your shopping cart and save $25. It's that easy. Sign up for classes at sewingexpo.com, enter that code THREADS in the promo box, and $25 will automatically pop in your cart. Check it out at sewingexpo.com.
Hi, welcome to Sewing with Threads, the monthly podcast by the staff of Threads magazine. I'm the editor, Sarah McFarland, and I'm here with other Threads staff members. There's Carol.
Hi, I'm the senior technical editor.
And Janine.
Hi, I'm the managing editor of production.
And our special guest today is longtime friend Anna Mazer. Anna is a designer, teacher, and author of the book Handbag Workshop. Handbag Workshop was published by the Taunton Press, and she's been a Threads contributor for 20 years. She's written lots of articles on gorgeous embellishing techniques, which showcase her amazing creativity. Anna also organizes pattern selection, assigns muslin making, and compiles testers' reviews for the pattern review department in every issue of Threads. So welcome, Anna. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. So nice to be here.
So I asked Carol to ask you the 5 questions we ask every guest.
That's right. Now we're going to find out all about you and how you got where you are today. The first question is, who taught you to sew?
Well, I want to give my mother credit for it, but not. Actually, she's a very nice lady. She tried to teach me to sew, but I must have been very stubborn because I didn't listen to her. I do now. She made me take out all my mistakes, and I thought that was not good to tell you to take out your mistakes. But basically, I'm self-taught. I've been sewing since I was 6. Embroidery at first, and eventually sewing.
Okay, what's your favorite sewing term?
Oh, that's easy. Measure twice, cut once. And it's not just measuring, it's for everything. Think about what you're doing, and the outcome is that much better.
That's actually great advice. Okay, so what are you currently sewing?
I have so many things that I have in the middle of processes, but I'm actually making pom-poms to add to a beach cover-up. Simple shapes in beautiful fabrics. When you get to a certain point in your age, you have piled up so much fabric and so many notions, and you just have to go for the best stuff, and that's what I'm studying. I'm working my way down from my nice fabrics to like no good fabrics.
I can't imagine you have no good fabrics in your stash, Anna. We've seen some of your fabrics. They're beautiful.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fabric, what is your favorite fabric to sew?
Oh, definitely silk by a milestone. It's so easy to sew. Most people think it's like hard to sew, it's hard to take care of, but it's not, because it can be washed, and it presses so well when you're sewing. It just molds itself.
Any particular type of silk fabric?
Any type of silk, anything that's like a natural fiber, because I know it's going to mold perfectly over my ham or whatever I'm using to press it over.
I know it. I feel like I don't want to go off on a major tangent here, but, most people are a little bit afraid of charmeuse because it's so slithery and, goes off grain and doesn't want to stay where they want it. But you are not daunted.
Well, if you can see the 2 garments behind us, they're both silk charmeuse.
Yes, beautiful.
I think if you start off with like your grain, nice straight grain, and you lay it on your flat surface, use a rotary cutter, and you cut it perfectly on grain or however it needs to be cut, the sewing is that much more easier. It's just grain up your fabric and press it, nice and flat.
Okay. And finally, what do you love most about sewing?
The end product. The fact that I took something flat and I turned it into 3D or 2D. And I love that I have something that nobody else has.
You're
that's
wearing
definitely-
something that no one else has. This beautiful vest.
Yeah.
It's leather and it has a sheen to it. It's a metallic finish to it.
Actually-
It's gorgeous.
Yes, and it's embossed too. I remember that Embellishments article.
It was, distressing leather.
Yes, yes. Okay, we're going to take a brief break, and then we'll be back to talk about pattern review with Anna.
Are you in? Threads Insider membership grants you access to project inspiration and the tested sewing methods you need to make gorgeous garments. Find out how to design skirts and tops, solve difficult fitting problems, and work successfully with all kinds of fabrics. We recently updated Insider, and it now includes the print magazine, the online archive, plus exclusive video and article new releases. To find out more and become a member, visit threadsmagazine.com/insider.
Okay, and we're back. And we're talking with Anna Mazer. She is the editor who compiles our pattern review column. And I wanted to talk about the process because it's one of our most popular departments in the magazine. And I think that our readers, our audience, have some questions about how it comes together. And I depend on Anna to be extremely organized because this is all done remotely. So let's say for an upcoming issue like 210 or 211, how does the process start?
I go online, check out all the patterns that I can check out. Right now I have over 150 bookmarked companies, besides the big 7 that we know, the little guys, the independents. And I just open up, 25 tabs at a time. I scan to see what's new on their website. And if this, then I keep a running list of all the independents. Right now it's about 250 pages of patterns, and then just gather them all up, and then I submit the list to you guys, and you look it over, and you kind of like pick 7, 8 patterns per issue. And I'm sure you wish you could pick more than that, but it's
I do. I wish that we could sew more samples too. So all of the patterns are muslined by testers
Right.
that Anna has carefully selected.
I have 21 testers that are scheduled a year and a half in advance, 7 issues at a time, actually. And each tester gets to test twice a year. So I break up those 21 into 3 groups of 7, if I did my math correctly. And they test twice a year. They know the testing occurs on the odd months of the year. They know that. I send it out on the first Tuesday, and I get it back 3 weeks later. But the process, I have a whole Excel spreadsheet of the dates of when stuff needs to get done. That's how I kind of remember. And the reason why after doing it for 15 years, 209 will mark 15 years of doing the pattern review column.
Amazing.
I have told myself that I'm going to mail it a certain day of the week and get it back on a certain day, on a certain month. Like this, I don't have to remember the schedule. So,
Oh, yes. I think one thing that people may not always appreciate about our process is that we are working on multiple issues at a time. It's not that you do one issue and then you start the next issue. So you are working more than a year and a half in advance. And like 1 week, we might receive the muslins, the physical muslins here at the magazine. Another week, we might get a preliminary list of suggested patterns from you. All these things are going on at once, and you're dealing with 21 testers out there.
the way I have set it up in my mind, so I remember when the next selection is due, is the Friday before the muslins come in, which is the following Thursday. That Friday, I start going through the websites looking for new patterns. Like this, it gives me a little bit of a breather, like about a week to work on the new patterns that are out there before I have to work on the evaluations. The testers write up an evaluation. We have a form that we submit, and I get that back, and it gets reworded and condensed, and then I submit that, and you guys do even some more rewording and condensing, and that's the process.
And right before all that happened, you have just finished looking over the pattern review from the previous issue that went to the printer and checked all the drawings and made sure that everything is correct there too. So this is going on, lots of different parts of it every week. I'm sure there's something different that you have to do with it.
Usually about 3 or 4 days before that Friday when I start selecting the new patterns is when I get the PDF from you to proof.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And we have, behind the scenes, we really have a matrix that we try to fill so that we cover a wide range of patterns. So we always have, let's see, a blouse, jacket, coat, pants, skirt, ensemble, and we've been doing a wild card.
Yes.
And also within that, we try to cover casual wear, throw in some evening wear, some professional garments, plus size, knits, petite. So it's very difficult to tick off all those boxes every issue, but that's what we try to do.
Then you go and buy fabric and have some sewn up, some of the muslins, some of the patterns sewn up.
Yes. And a frequent question I get is, could you please sew everything? And we just don't have the bandwidth to do that. It's very expensive. Yeah. We do have a staff seamstress, Norma, and she's been on the podcast to talk about her work. And 4 garments out of the 8 is what we're usually able to manage. And we try to pick the garments, that will take a variety of fabrics and once again sort of tick off those different categories. It's a lot of fun to work on the department, at least on my end. And you've been doing it so long. Do you enjoy it?
I love looking at the new patterns. It keeps me in a loop of like who's doing what. And lately, it seems like we've been using a lot of international indies, and it's fun because once upon a time they had to ship the patterns to us, and it used to cost them so much in postage. I could just tell, how many euros they had to pay to mail 3 patterns to us. But now that there's a lot of the indies are doing PDF patterns.
Downloadable, right? Yes.
They've gotten away from the paper patterns. The ones that used to do paper patterns are actually doing away with it. So somebody can be in New Zealand, Australia, Norway, whatever. They just, within minutes, I get the download and get it printed, send it to the tester, and it's fun.
Yeah, that's a great service for our readers, too, because the sooner we can get that reviewed, the sooner they can get to see what's there.
Yeah.
And we rely so much on our pattern testers. They are amazing people, I tell you. We see some of the muslins that come in that they've made for testing the patterns, and we're always amazed at the craftsmanship, even of the muslin. We really appreciate the pattern testers.
We've met
They're
a few
awesome.
of them, too, at various events, and it's really fun to talk to them and find out what the experience is like from their end of things.
They've told me that it's like Christmas, twice a year for them, because they don't know what they're getting in the mail.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
what I do is when I'm assigning the patterns to the tester, I kind of look at their file. I keep a file on each tester and see what they've done. If they've done a pant, I'll try to send them a top. If they haven't done a jacket in a while, send them a jacket. I also look at the workload because some patterns are easier than the others. So if one tester gets a very labor-intensive pattern this round, the next round I'll make sure she gets the easiest, or he.
Yeah. That's a question I wanted to ask, because of course there are some ensemble patterns that have 5 or 6 garments each with multiple views and sleeve lengths and collar types and all that. How do you and the testers work out so that they don't have to sew every single view? Because it could be 20 garments in some cases.
Well, sometimes, I don't know, you'll notice that some of the muslins come in looking pretty funny. They'll have a sleeve from one view, as another sleeve from another view. And what I try to do is I try to have them make a muslin with the longest view given and have them mark up the muslin okay, this is the shorter view here. And of course, it's also like Christmas for me when these muslins come in, because I get to try them on and double check what the tester says. Oh, that's too long, too short. I get to put them on and see what the tester means. So.
It's actually like Christmas for us when the muslins come to us, too, because we do try them on.
Christmas all year round.
We just wish that, they were made maybe more in our sizes.
It's fun to see the different fabrics that they use for the muslin. Sometimes, occasionally, they'll make more of a wearable muslin. And yes, I have tried to get the marker notations off of things to try and keep them.
I know when I was marking up the muslin that just came in, I'm like, okay, maybe I should use one of those.
The friction pen?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can just erase with the steam.
Another question I get is, and I know the answer to this behind the scenes, but why test everything? And why redraw the illustrations? And I am still surprised at how many things we discover are off or maybe not adequately illustrated or described in the pattern. Or how
Or
do you
steps
feel about
forgotten.
that? Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's a lot of the testing process. These designers also test their patterns before they issue their patterns. They have groups of testers because you can't make something and be just right or perfect the first time around. You always have to tweak it, have to change it. And because we all have different body types, something that might look good on Sarah might not look good on Janine. It's and you don't really know that until you see it in 3D in muslin. And even the people that have the staff to correct this stuff, they also miss. They'll miss a seam here, a seam there. And I know I look at the illustration before I look at the sewn garment. And I look at seams and where they are. If that seam is not there, or if there's an extra seam, it's going to affect whatever a person chooses. Maybe they pick the pattern because they love that seam, and then they open the pattern, it's not there. It's
Yes, that's true. Yeah, and how many times have we corrected an illustration? Stephen, our art director, does the illustrations for us, and there's always a fix when we go back just to double check. I mean, it's tough to get all of those. The illustrations are more finely tuned than you realize.
And we know from publishing the magazine that there are many phases of production for everything, and it's possible to accidentally go back to a previous view by mistake in your little drawing and not get the most updated one. So I think a pattern company could make a glitch like that occasionally and leave out something that they maybe had corrected and just didn't go out that way.
Now, when you arrived today, I was talking to you about the selections for 209, which we have to make. And we were talking a little bit about trends in patterns. And I think we both are seeing a lot of dresses.
yes.
Yeah. And I was thinking about adjusting the matrix for that issue and showing a few more dresses because they look really interesting. With all the independent designers, do you think that patterns are getting more interesting and more complex? Do you see trends there?
A lot of them are simplifying their shapes, more simpler than the detailed, the traditional, tailored look that I knew growing up, interfacing, padding, shoulder pads, all that stuff. But yet I'm seeing a group of young kids, I think they're just out of design school, fashion school. They're actually getting back into the traditional, the more tailored garments. And there's just a few companies out there, but most of them rely on the actual fabric. And to me, that makes a garment anyways. And we don't always have the time to sit down and sew for hours on end. So if you can take a simple shape and use the most beautiful fabric out there, you will love that garment, for years to come.
Do you think that the pattern makers will do more than to recommend fabrics, specific fabrics? Because you're saying the fabric is the one that, you see on all your patterns recommended fabrics, but do you think that they're going to do more to recommend a particular brand of fabric or a supplier?
You bring up a good point. In the 208, I believe it's New Zealand, a pattern out of New Zealand or Australia, somewhere from down under. They had a fabric recommendation I had never seen before. It begins with the CHIRMINE, something like that. I forget what it is.
Oh, it's a crinkly Japanese silk, like from a kimono?
Is
that what it is?
When I looked it up, it's wow, that's interesting that it's nice to see different recommendations versus your typical, linen,
right,
silk.
Silky types.
Yeah, because I think
things like that.
I think a sewer also learns when they see a different fabric, they'll go looking for that type of fabric. It's okay. Yeah. So it's something that's different.
Oh, we have a great time when the Murphy patterns come in Italian, because Italian, French, and then some weird English translation that has a word that even in English doesn't mean a fabric that we recognize sometimes. So we do a little research to figure out what they want.
Because I speak Portuguese and I can read and write, well, barely, but a lot of times I did Italian, which is kind of similar. I understand the Italian before I will understand what they're saying in English. I'm like, okay, that's what that means.
Yeah. Well, we should ask you about that then, because sometimes they sometimes have very, very specialized types of fabric, which maybe are more easy to get in Italy by name. They may exist here, but people don't necessarily know, I'd like a mousseline, which is not muslin. I think it's like a chiffon or georgette maybe in English. Yeah. And they may translate it as muslin, which is going to throw people off pretty badly if that's what they're looking for.
That's right. Well, you've seen so many patterns over the years. Is there a pattern company or a pattern type silhouette that you pay closer attention to? I know you like a lot of tailored clothes.
When I first started sewing, I went right into, when I was a youngster in my teens, right into tailoring, like blazers. I don't know why, but and there wasn't that many sewing books out there. I used to buy patterns, especially the Vogue patterns, because they had different directions, the designer ones, and that's how I learned to kind of sew. So, and now what I like about a pattern is when it teaches you a technique that's not like in your traditional sewing books these days. And I do love, I used to love Berta before they added the seam allowances. Now I like Murphy because they still don't have the seam allowances, because you can see the actual shape. You can splice into your pattern and tape, one side to another side, and all of a sudden eliminate a seam. But I think they're so well drafted, and I trace a lot of the Murphy patterns. I just put my ruler down and I just see the slope change on seam lines that most people are not aware that there's it's not a straight line. There's a little curve, there's a little indentation there. Mm-hmm. And that all makes a difference when you're in the final garment. If you cut carefully and you follow those seam lines carefully, your garment will fit that much better.
You talked about pressing the charmeuse earlier. Do you use steam? Can you talk about pressing a little bit?
When first of all, this blouse, which was balled up before I got here this morning. My daughter had it for a couple of years and she kind of didn't iron it properly. But anyway, so I iron from the inside when it's a garment that's already finished. And I try to and I'll use steam on the major parts, but when it comes to the details, I don't use the steam because I don't want to burn my fingers. Mm-hmm. I will just kind of iron it lightly, and then I'll go back with steam, because once you add steam to it, you can actually create creases. And to iron delicate stuff with a lot of details, I just use a pressing mitt, or iron over my hand, and I try to iron on the edge of the ironing board, because it's very hard to get to something that's already constructed.
Right.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can put in the ironing board there. But I do use steam. I do use water. I use water with a little paintbrush. Dip the paintbrush in the water. Shake out the water. Just dab it there, and it's not going to stain your silk.
Oh, that's good. Good tip.
In addition to pattern review, the blouse brought to mind that I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the articles you've done for Threads, because that yellow blouse was on a cover. We'll have the actual issue in the show notes. But you've done so many articles for us, and usually these wonderful embellishment techniques. You do very, very meticulous work. And how did you get into the details and doing so much embellishment?
When I was little, I did a lot of cross stitch and cut work, embroidery, hand cut work. And I love a needle in my hand, and then I got bored with that. I went on to making, as I said, tailored garments, and then I got bored with that, and I went into embellishing. But they all they're related, because I think tailoring, you need a lot of patience to do tailoring, and you just learn. Then I'm like, okay, maybe I could just add some beads to that. Maybe I can add some appliques, and it's just to make things interesting, so it doesn't. Sewing can get boring if you sew the same thing all the time, the same shape, the same silhouette, the same garment. So it's just to change things up.
What kind of designers do you look at for inspiration Do you have any favorites?
Chanel is my favorite. I just love the details. And now we're very lucky because 15, 20 years ago, you could not get online access to any of this stuff. And now you can just like zoom right in and and see, because they basically create their own fabric.
Yeah.
The embellishment creates the fabric. They start off with flat piece of fabric and they just add embellishment to it. And all of a sudden you have a plaid. And if you look closely, that plaid is made up of, sequins or whatever. It's not really a woven plaid. So
I'm always amazed at the amount of detail that you do have in your garments, and I'm wondering how much testing or practicing or trying to figure out time you spend before you get to the point that you're happy with this particular embellishment.
Well, to me, time. I make a garment. I'm not under a deadline to make the garment, first of all, unless it's an article that I'm under. But if I'm making something, I don't care how long it takes. It's when I'm done, I'm done. And when I put something on, I want to feel that it's as nice on the inside as it is on the outside. So I just take my time. And as you were saying that you put stuff in a box, as Sarah was saying, and she tries to do a little bit every day. And that's what I do. If you just give yourself a half hour, an hour each day, it's amazing what you can accomplish.
Well, I'm impressed by the waistband on the skirt that you have that goes with the yellow blouse here. It's all beaded. So I'm wondering how long that took you.
Actually, believe it or not, I went up to visit my mom in Massachusetts, 2 hours away. I had 3/4 of that waistband done on the ride up and back. Of course, I wasn't driving. I was just beating away, just driving along, and then came back. And so basically it was done. It took more than the 4 hours to beat it, but I did the majority of it beating. I used downtime to do stuff that takes a long time, that's tedious.
Well, it's gorgeous.
I think the first time I met you was when at Manchester Sewing Center. Judy Newcomb and I went over there to maybe go to a class or something. I can't remember exactly why. And you were either running in or running out. And you stopped us, and you and Judy had worked together, and you had a gown that must have been for a competition. And I remember you just lifting it up. The interior of the hem was beaded on that gown. It was so amazing. And this was unlike anything I had ever seen before. And we went away and Judy said, "Oh, yes, she's the real deal."
I call that hidden elegance.
Yeah.
Wow.
Only you know that it's in there.
But at the same time, it seemed nice because it was probably the lightweight silk, and it gave it a little movement and weight along the hem. It was it functioned too in a way to have those beads there.
That's why I added the beads, very much like you would. Chanel adds a chain.
Yeah.
Chanel jackets, to just weigh it down.
Yeah. Well, Anna, I could talk to you for much longer, but we've come to the end of our time for this episode. And for more about Anna's beautiful embellishment articles, you can look in the show notes for this episode. So thank you for being here, Anna.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Follow Threads on social media and visit threadsmagazine.com to view show notes for this episode. While you're on the site, check out Threads Insider, our online membership with exclusive access to expert sewing techniques. Until next time, keep on sewing with threads.